Have you ever wondered how someone incredibly intelligent, logical, and full of potential can suddenly make the dumbest decisions of their life? How a person who once saw life clearly becomes trapped in their own thoughts, their own pride, their own overthinking. You see, intelligence is a gift, but it's also a dangerous trap, because when the mind becomes too proud of its power, it stops growing. It starts defending its identity instead of expanding its awareness. I've met people with brilliant minds, people who could solve equations, run businesses, build empires, but they were mentally broken, emotionally fragile, and spiritually empty. They weren't stupid because they lacked intelligence. They became stupid because they stopped questioning themselves. They stopped learning. They stopped feeling. And the scary truth is, this can happen to any of us. The smarter you are, the easier it is to lie to yourself, to justify your comfort, to explain away your fears, to confuse activity with progress, and to call pride confidence. But today, we're going to break that illusion. We're going to talk about how intelligent minds become stupid, not to shame anyone, but to wake up the part of you that's forgotten how to think freely, how to feel deeply, and how to live truthfully. Because real intelligence is not about knowing everything. It's about staying humble enough to keep learning. So if you've ever felt stuck in your own mind, if you've ever felt like your intelligence became your prison, then stay with me till the end of this talk. Because what you'll hear today might not just challenge your thinking. It might completely reset your mind. Let me tell you something powerful about the human mind. The moment you think you know everything, you stop growing. And that right there is how intelligence begins to rot from the inside. Most people believe stupidity is the absence of knowledge. It's not. Stupidity is the arrogance of knowledge. It's when you think you've already arrived. When you stop asking questions, when curiosity is replaced with certainty. I've met countless people who are brilliant, highly educated, sharp, logical, capable, and yet completely stuck. They walk around with this invisible crown on their head, built from their past achievements, their degrees, their IQ. But here's the truth: once the crown becomes heavier than your hunger to learn, it crushes your potential. The moment you say, I already know that, you close the door to growth. Think about a child. A child questions everything. Why is the sky blue? Why do people fight? Why can't we fly? That curiosity is pure intelligence alive. It's electric. It's expanding. But as we grow older, that spark gets buried under layers of pride. We start identifying ourselves by what we know, not by what we want to discover. And slowly the mind becomes rigid, confident, yes, but closed. An intelligent person can build walls of logic so tall that even truth can't climb over them. You see, ego is tricky. It disguises itself as confidence, but what it really is fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of looking foolish. Fear of losing the identity of the smart one. So instead of listening, they argue. Instead of exploring new ideas, they defend the old ones. Instead of asking questions, they start giving speeches. And when that happens, they stop learning, because learning requires humility. It requires you to say, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know everything. Maybe there's more to understand. That's hard for the intelligent mind to admit, because intelligence without humility turns into self-deception. Some of the smartest people fail not because they're incapable, but because they can't get out of their own way. They're addicted to being right. They need validation more than truth. So when life challenges them, they don't adapt. They argue. When reality shows them something new, they resist it. They rationalize their pain instead of transforming it. And over time, that resistance makes them blind. Have you ever noticed that the wisest people in the world rarely talk about how smart they are? They don't flaunt their intelligence, because real intelligence doesn't need an audience. It speaks through awareness, through presence, through understanding. It's quiet, it listens, it grows, but fake intelligence, ego-driven intelligence, is loud, it interrupts. It judges, it wants to be seen. It feeds on comparison: who's smarter, who's better, who's winning. But the truth is, comparison is a game that the ego plays to avoid the real battle, the one within yourself. Because if you're always comparing, you never have to confront your own limitations. The illusion of knowing is one of the most dangerous forms of blindness, because it makes you comfortable. And comfort is seductive. It whispers, you're fine, you already know enough, you don't need to change. But growth never happens in comfort. Growth demands curiosity. It demands discomfort. It demands that you question what you believe, even when it hurts your pride. Every major breakthrough in history, every invention, every discovery, every transformation came from someone who was curious enough to say, what if? They weren't afraid to look foolish. They weren't afraid to fail. They were more committed to truth than to their ego. So if you ever catch yourself saying, I already know that, stop. Ask yourself, do you really? Have you just stopped listening? The greatest mistake intelligent people make is believing that information equals transformation. It doesn't. You can read every book, attend every seminar, memorize every quote, but if your heart is closed, if your ego is in charge, none of it changes you. Transformation begins when knowledge becomes self-awareness. When you stop just knowing things and start living them. There's a difference between having knowledge and being wise. Knowledge fills the mind. Wisdom expands the soul. And wisdom only comes when you stay humble enough to keep learning every single day, no matter how much you already know. Sometimes the most powerful words you can say aren't, I know. They're, teach me. Those two words can change everything. Your relationships, your growth, your mindset, your success. Because when you're willing to learn, the universe opens doors you didn't even know existed. So if you want to protect your intelligence, if you want to stay sharp, awake, alive, stay humble, keep asking, keep listening. Don't let the illusion of knowing steal your curiosity. Because the moment you believe you've mastered life, life will show you just how much you still don't understand. And that's when true wisdom begins. Let's talk about one of the biggest traps intelligent people fall into. Overthinking. You know exactly what I'm talking about, that constant analyzing, that endless circling of thoughts, that voice in your head that says, wait, what if this doesn't work? What if it's not perfect yet? What if I fail? It sounds smart, it feels rational, but the truth is, it's fear wearing the mask of intelligence. The smartest minds in the world often get stuck not because they don't know what to do, but because they can't stop thinking about every possible outcome. They plan, they calculate, they strategize, and then they freeze. They spend so much time trying to find the right path that they forget the only way to find the right path is to walk it. Overthinking is seductive. It makes you feel productive when you're actually doing nothing. You sit there making lists, building plans, imagining every scenario, but deep down, you're avoiding action. You're hiding behind logic because it feels safer than risking failure. You convince yourself that you're being careful, but what you're really being is afraid. I've seen people with so much potential, people who could have changed their entire lives, just stall. They think themselves into paralysis. They've got brilliant ideas, but instead of executing, they're still perfecting the plan, and years go by like that. Time doesn't stop for people who overthink. It just moves on without them. The mind is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. When you let your mind lead without heart, it keeps you trapped in cycles of doubt and hesitation, because your mind's job is to protect you, to keep you safe, to avoid pain. But growth is pain, progress is discomfort. So the mind says, wait, not yet. Let's think a bit more. Let's make sure it's safe. And it sounds reasonable, but it's poison, because while you're waiting for perfect, someone else is taking imperfect action and winning. You see, the world doesn't reward the smartest person in the room. It rewards the one who's willing to take action in the face of uncertainty. Clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. You don't think your way into clarity. You act your way into it. Every step you take gives you feedback, and that feedback gives you understanding. You can't think your way to experience. Overthinking gives you the illusion of control. You believe that if you just think enough, plan enough, you can avoid failure. But failure isn't something to be avoided. It's something to be used. You learn more in one failed attempt than 1,000 perfectly constructed ideas that never leave your head. Some of you listening right now, you've got dreams that scare you. You've got goals that you've been carrying for years. You've done the research, you've visualized, you've made the lists, and yet you haven't moved. You're waiting for the perfect timing, the perfect confidence, the perfect plan. Let me tell you the truth. That perfect moment will never come. You create it by stepping forward, by doing the thing you're afraid of, by trusting that you'll figure it out as you go. Action creates momentum, and momentum creates confidence. You don't wait until you're confident to act. You act until you become confident. That's how real change happens. Every time you move, no matter how small the step, you build evidence that you can handle what's next. You start realizing that you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to take the next step. The mind loves to live in what if? What if it doesn't work? What if they judge me? What if I fail? But what if you succeed? What if it works out better than you imagined? What if every fear you have right now is just the mind trying to protect the version of you that's already outgrown? Because that's what overthinking really is. It's your mind's way of holding on to comfort while your soul is begging to grow. There's a difference between intelligence and wisdom. Intelligence analyzes. Wisdom acts. Intelligence says, let's think this through. Wisdom says, let's find out. You need both, but you can't live only in your head. You've got to get into your body, into movement, into momentum. Because the longer you wait, the heavier fear becomes. And here's what happens when you overthink too long, opportunities pass. People move on, time slips away. And the worst part isn't the missed chance. It's the quiet regret that builds inside you. That voice that whispers, you could have done more. You should have tried. And the more you ignore that voice, the louder it becomes. The mind can justify anything, even your own stagnation. It'll call your fear logic. It'll call your delay patience. It'll tell you you're not ready yet. But you are, you've been ready. You're just afraid to leap without knowing where you'll land. And that's exactly what growth requires. Faith. You'll never eliminate fear through thinking. You eliminate it through action. Once you move, the fog starts to clear. Once you step, the next step appears. Once you act, your mind quiets down because it finally has direction. You can't think your way to courage. You live your way into it. Because at the end of the day, overthinking kills more dreams than failure ever will. There's something I've seen over and over again. Incredibly smart people who can explain everything but feel nothing. They can describe emotions, define them, even teach about them, yet they're completely disconnected from their own. And it's not because they're heartless. It's because somewhere along the way, they learn to value intellect over emotion. They learn to think instead of feel, to analyze instead of connect, to be right instead of real. That's the curse of intelligence without emotional awareness. When your mind becomes so strong that it builds walls around your heart, you lose touch with what makes life meaningful. You can win arguments, but lose relationships. You can solve problems, but not understand people. You can have all the logic in the world and still feel empty inside. See, emotions aren't weakness. They're information. They're feedback from your soul. They tell you what matters, what hurts, what needs attention, but when you shut them down, when you suppress them to appear strong, you don't become stronger, you just become numb. And numbness doesn't protect you, it isolates you, it cuts you off from others, and even worse, from yourself. A lot of intelligent minds fall into this trap because emotion feels unpredictable. It doesn't fit neatly into logic or formulas. It's messy, it's raw, and smart people don't like messy. They want to understand everything, control everything, manage every variable, but emotion doesn't play by those rules. It demands vulnerability, surrender, and presence. 3 things the ego hates. So instead of facing what they feel, they hide behind reason and they intellectualize pain. They say things like, I understand why this happened, or it's not a big deal, when deep down they're breaking. They process feelings like a math problem, thinking that if they can explain it, they can escape it. But you can't outthink pain. You have to feel it to heal it. It's ironic, isn't it? The more intelligent some people become, the less emotionally aware they are. They develop this emotional blindness, a kind of tunnel vision that sees facts but not feelings, data but not depth. And in that blindness, they hurt others without even realizing it. They speak truth without compassion. They give advice without empathy. They confuse honesty with harshness. You've probably seen this before. Maybe you've lived it. Someone says, I'm just being logical, when really they're being cold. Or I'm just telling it like it is, when what they're actually doing is avoiding emotional responsibility. And the sad part, they think they're right. They think they're being strong. But strength isn't suppressing emotion, it's mastering it. Intelligence can solve problems, emotional intelligence prevents them. You can't build connection with intellect alone. You need heart, you need understanding. You need to listen, not to respond, not to fix, but to truly hear. When was the last time you actually listened to someone without analyzing them, without trying to diagnose or debate? That's what real emotional intelligence is. The ability to be present with someone's truth, even if it makes you uncomfortable. The mind wants certainty, the heart wants connection. The problem is most people try to choose one over the other. They say, I'll deal with emotions later, or feelings just get in the way. But emotions aren't in the way, they are the way. Every decision you make, every action you take is influenced by how you feel, whether you admit it or not. When you ignore that, your logic becomes detached from reality. A person who can't read their own emotions is like a pilot flying blind. They may be skilled, they may know all the buttons, but they can't see the storm they're flying into. They crash not because they're stupid, because they're disconnected. You've got to reconnect to that emotional part of you. That doesn't mean you become fragile or overly sensitive. It means you learn to understand your emotions instead of judging them. When you feel anger, don't bury it. Ask what it's protecting. When you feel sadness, don't fight it. Ask what it's teaching. When you feel fear, don't run. Ask what it's warning. That's emotional mastery. And when you develop that, your intelligence expands, because now your mind isn't just calculating outcomes. It's understanding people. It's understanding yourself. It's aligned with reality. You can't influence others, lead others, or love others deeply if you can't even recognize what's happening inside of you. The most powerful people in the world aren't the ones who can argue best. They're the ones who can connect best. They can walk into a room and feel what others feel. They can calm chaos without speaking a word. That's not logic. That's presence. That's heart. Intelligence makes you sharp. Emotion makes you human. Combine the two and you become unstoppable. But separate them and your intelligence becomes cold, lifeless, mechanical. You may build a successful life, but it'll be empty. Because at the end of the day, people don't remember how smart you were. They remember how you made them feel. So don't be the smartest person in the room who can't feel their own heart. Don't be the one who wins arguments but loses peace. Don't be the one who's right but alone. Because intelligence without emotion isn't wisdom. It's emptiness disguised as strength. One of the biggest reasons intelligent minds become stagnant, even self-destructive, is because they're terrified of being wrong. That fear doesn't always show up as fear. It often hides behind perfectionism, control, or endless preparation. But deep down, it's the same thing. The fear of failure, the fear of not looking smart, the fear of not being enough. You see, intelligent people build their identity around being right. They're praised for their answers, admired for their confidence, rewarded for their results. Somewhere along the way, I made a mistake starts to sound like I am a mistake. So instead of experimenting, they start protecting. Instead of growing, they start defending. Their mind becomes a shield instead of a tool. When your self-worth is tied to always being right, you stop taking risks. You stop asking bold questions. You stop trying new things because failure would mean exposing the cracks in your intelligence. So you play it safe. You stay where you're comfortable. And while that feels secure in the moment, it's actually the slow death of your potential. The truth is, nobody grows without failing. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the foundation of it. Every innovation, every breakthrough, every transformation came from someone who was willing to look foolish, to be wrong, to fall flat, and still get back up. But when your identity is built on being the smart one, failure feels unbearable. You start avoiding it at all costs, and that's where the real danger begins. Think about it. A child learning to walk doesn't quit after falling the first few times. They fall, they cry, they try again, because they don't see falling as failure. They see it as part of the process. But adults, we fall once and call it proof that we're not good enough. The difference isn't intelligence, it's mindset. Children learn through failure, adults fear it. The higher your intelligence, the more creative your excuses become. You rationalize your avoidance. You say things like, I'm just waiting for the right time, or I need to be fully prepared first, or I'm being strategic. But what you're really doing is avoiding the discomfort of not knowing. You're avoiding the risk of embarrassment. You're protecting your image instead of pursuing your growth. You can't evolve if your ego is more important than your expansion. Every time you choose to protect your pride, instead of chasing your potential, you reinforce your own cage. The bars are invisible, made of fear, perfectionism, and control, but they're strong enough to hold your future hostage. Failure doesn't mean you're not intelligent. It means you're human. It means you're learning. The only people who never fail are the ones who never try. And ironically, those are the people who end up losing the most, not their intelligence, but their aliveness. Because when you live in fear of failure, you stop truly living. The most dangerous failure isn't the one you experience, it's the one you avoid. It's the dream you never chase, the idea you never test, the potential you never explore. You can recover from mistakes, but you can't recover from regret. Regret eats you from the inside out. It whispers, you could have been more, you should have tried. You've got to rewire what failure means to you. Failure isn't proof you're not enough. It's feedback. It's life's way of saying, not this way. Try again. It's redirection, not rejection. And if you stop taking it personally, you'll start seeing it as a teacher. Every failure carries a message, a lesson, a seed of wisdom. But you can only harvest it if you're humble enough to face it. People often say, I'm afraid to fail. What they really mean is, I'm afraid to feel what failure will make me feel. Shame, embarrassment, disappointment, those emotions hurt. But avoiding them doesn't make them go away. It just makes your life smaller. You can't protect yourself from pain and still expect to grow. Growth is pain. Expansion is discomfort. Progress is uncertainty. The paradox is this: the more you embrace failure, the less it controls you. The more you face it, the faster you grow. You start realizing that mistakes don't define you. How you respond to them does. And when you no longer fear being wrong, you become unstoppable. Because now you're free. You can take risks without anxiety. You can learn without shame. You can start over without guilt. You're not trying to prove you're smart anymore. You're trying to become wiser. That's the shift. Intelligence wants to be right. Wisdom wants to grow. Ask yourself this: when was the last time you did something where you didn't know if it would work? When was the last time you allowed yourself to fail publicly, to be vulnerable, to take a leap, even if you couldn't see the ground? That's where your next level lives. That's where confidence is built, not from avoiding fear, but from facing it until it loses its power. You will fail, you will fall, you will make mistakes. But every time you do, you gain something no textbook, no degree. No amount of intellect can teach: resilience, the courage to keep moving when your plan collapses, the strength to believe again after disappointment. That's real power. Don't let the fear of being wrong stop you from discovering what's right for you. Because in the end, the greatest failure isn't falling, it's refusing to rise. And the only true mistake is never daring to make one. One of the most subtle ways intelligent minds turn against themselves is through their addiction to certainty. The smarter you are, the more you crave control. You want to predict outcomes, minimize risk, make everything make sense. Logic becomes your safety net. You build systems, strategies, and explanations for everything because uncertainty feels like chaos, and chaos feels dangerous. But the irony is this: the more you cling to certainty, the less alive you become. Intelligence seeks patterns. It looks for order. It wants answers that fit. But life isn't built on clean equations. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It's filled with contradictions and moments that don't make logical sense, yet somehow carry the deepest meaning. The moment you demand certainty from life, you stop flowing with it. You start resisting it. You begin to treat every unknown as a threat instead of an invitation. There's a difference between planning your path and trying to control it. Control comes from fear. It's the mind saying, if I can predict everything, I won't get hurt. But that same mindset locks you inside a narrow reality, because every time you avoid uncertainty, you also avoid possibility. You can't discover new parts of yourself if you never step into the unknown. You see, logic is a beautiful servant, but a terrible master. Logic helps you build things, but it can't tell you why to build them. It can help you make sense of the world, but it can't give you meaning. That's where intuition comes in. Intuition isn't random. It's not unscientific. It's the deeper intelligence that feels before it thinks. It's the whisper inside you that knows something's right before your mind can explain it. But for many intelligent people, intuition feels unreliable. It doesn't come with proof or data. It can't be measured or controlled. So they dismiss it. They override it with logic. They ignore that small inner voice that says, go there, or try this, or something's off here. And when they do that long enough, they lose connection to their own inner guidance system. They end up living life from the neck up, rational, efficient, but emotionally and spiritually disconnected. Have you ever made a decision that made perfect sense on paper but felt wrong in your gut? You had all the facts, all the numbers, all the reasons, yet something deep inside whispered, don't do it. Maybe you ignored it. Maybe you told yourself, I'm just being emotional. And later you realized your gut was right. That wasn't luck. That was intuition, your deeper self trying to guide you before your brain could catch up. When you stop listening to that, your life starts to feel hollow. You might succeed by society's standards, but inside you feel restless, anxious, or unfulfilled. Because you're living logically, not authentically. You're making choices that look right but don't feel right. You've replaced inner truth with external validation. The need for certainty kills creativity. It kills passion. It kills spontaneity. You can't innovate and control at the same time. Every great creator, leader, or thinker who changed the world had to surrender to uncertainty. They had to take steps without knowing what would happen next. They had to trust that something bigger than logic was guiding them. Their instinct, their vision, their heart. If you always need to understand before you move, you'll spend your life standing still, because understanding doesn't always come first. Sometimes it follows action. You figure it out after you leap. You find your purpose after you start walking. That's how life works. You can't see the whole path until you take the first step. But the intelligent mind doesn't like that. It wants guarantees. It wants to know how everything ends before it begins. It wants to protect itself from pain, from embarrassment, from loss. And in doing so, it also protects itself from growth, from love, from transformation. When you trust only your logic, you limit yourself to what you already know. But when you trust your intuition, you open yourself to what you could become. Intuition doesn't always speak loudly. It's subtle. It comes as a feeling, a pull, a quiet sense of direction. The mind will question it. The ego will doubt it. But deep down, something in you already knows. That's the part of you that's wiser than reason. You've got to learn to let go of the need to control the outcome, because control is an illusion. You can plan, you can prepare, you can calculate, but you can't predict every variable. Life will always throw you something unexpected. And when it does, it's not punishing you. It's inviting you to grow. It's reminding you that the point isn't to have everything figured out. The point is to trust yourself enough to move forward, even when you don't. The moments that change your life rarely come with certainty. They come disguised as risk. They come wrapped in doubt. They test your faith, your patience, your courage. And those who trust the unknown, who listen to that inner nudge and take the leap anyway, they're the ones who find the magic the logical mind can never explain. So don't let your craving for control rob you of life's mystery. You don't have to have every answer. You don't need to predict every turn. Sometimes the smartest thing you can do is surrender, not to weakness, but to wisdom. Because when you stop trying to control everything, you finally make space for something extraordinary to unfold. And that's when life stops being calculated and starts becoming miraculous. You know what's strange? We live in a world that's drowning in information, but starving for meaning. Everywhere you look, there's knowledge, books, podcasts, videos, tutorials, quotes. We can access more wisdom in 10 seconds than people could an entire lifetime centuries ago. And yet people are more confused, more lost, more disconnected than ever. Because knowledge alone doesn't change anything. It's not how much you know that matters. It's what you do with what you know. An intelligent mind without purpose becomes a storage unit. It collects, organizes, and archives ideas, but never applies them. It's like owning a library you never read from, or a map you never follow. You might feel powerful because of what you've gathered, but in reality, you're stuck in intellectual motion without direction. You've mistaken information for transformation. This is one of the quietest forms of self-sabotage for intelligent people. They're constantly learning. They read the books, attend the seminars, listen to the podcasts, but they never implement. They're addicted to the high of insight. Every new idea gives a momentary rush. This is it. This will change everything. And then a week later, nothing changes, because knowledge isn't power, it's potential. Only execution gives it power. You can't think your way to a new life. You have to act your way there. Action is what turns information into experience. It's what gives your knowledge depth and meaning. Without action, intelligence becomes noise, endless analysis, endless consumption, endless talking. You keep thinking about what you want to do, planning how you'll do it, convincing yourself you're preparing, but preparation without movement is just procrastination in disguise. Purpose is what gives knowledge direction. It's what turns raw data into wisdom. Without a sense of purpose, your intelligence becomes scattered. You might know a little about everything, but nothing deeply. You might be busy every day, but not truly productive. And eventually, that creates an emptiness, a quiet feeling of, I know so much, so why do I still feel stuck? The truth is, knowing more won't fill that void. Doing more meaningfully will. Purpose isn't found in thought, it's found in motion. It's discovered through experience, through trial, through failure, through living. The mind wants clarity before it acts, but clarity comes after you act. You don't find purpose by thinking about it. You find it by engaging with life. I've seen so many brilliant people waste their potential because they never connected their knowledge to something greater than themselves. They learn endlessly, but it's all inward, no expression, no contribution, no impact. They become trapped in intellectual loops. The smarter they get, the more overwhelmed they feel, because purpose isn't about accumulation, it's about alignment. You can read every success principle in the world, but if you don't know why you're chasing success, it will never satisfy you. You can master every strategy, every system, every tool, but without a deeper why, it all feels mechanical. The mind keeps searching for more information, but what it's really craving is direction. You've got to ask yourself, what am I using my intelligence for? What am I building? Who am I serving? How am I using what I know to make a difference? Even a small one. Because intelligence without purpose isn't just empty, it's dangerous. It makes you restless, cynical, overanalyzing everything but living nothing. Purpose simplifies everything. When you know your why, decisions get easier. You stop chasing every shiny idea because you know what truly matters. You stop overthinking because your energy is focused. You stop needing validation because your fulfillment comes from alignment, not applause. The most successful and fulfilled people aren't necessarily the smartest. They're the most aligned. They've found a way to channel what they know into something that means something. They don't just collect ideas, they embody them. They live them. Their knowledge isn't theoretical. It's integrated into who they are. You can't find purpose in a book. You can't download it or memorize it. You find it when you get out of your head and into your heart. When you stop chasing certainty and start chasing meaning. When you stop asking, what should I do? And start asking, what feels right to do? Purpose isn't discovered in comfort. It's revealed through courage. The courage to live with intention, not just intelligence. And here's the truth, purpose doesn't have to be massive. It doesn't have to change the whole world. It just has to change yours. It could be raising your children with love, building something meaningful, helping others grow, creating beauty, teaching, healing, leading, whatever gives your knowledge life, because that's when intelligence becomes energy. That's when it stops being static and starts being creative. Without purpose, your knowledge serves your ego. With purpose, your knowledge serves humanity. That's the difference between being smart and being impactful, between collecting ideas and changing lives, including your own. So don't just learn to know, learn to grow, learn to serve, learn to express what's inside you in a way that moves the world forward. Your mind is a gift, but it was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be a tool, one that builds, heals, inspires, and creates. Because when knowledge meets purpose, intelligence becomes wisdom. And that's when your mind stops being just smart and starts becoming powerful.